listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, we speak with 7 News US Correspondent Mylee Hogan, who's on the ground in LA as the immigration protests continue. US President Donald Trump isn't backing down, now threatening to deploy thousands of US Marines and soldiers onto the streets. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Tuesday, the 10th of June. The LA Police Department has confirmed that a formal investigation has been launched into the shooting of an Australian journalist during the LA riots. Lauren Tomasi has returned to work after being shot in the leg with a rubber bullet by a police officer. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the vision was horrific and he has raised these issues with the US administration.
That footage was horrific. That was the footage of an Australian journalist doing what journalists do at their very best, which is to go into an environment that's not comfortable, but where in LA it is not unreasonable to think that she would not have been targeted with a rubber bullet.
Mr Albanese is set to meet Mr Trump later this week for their first face-to-face meeting since our Prime Minister was re-elected last month. Authorities are now investigating another embryo bungle involving Monash IVF. In the latest mistake, the fertility company has confirmed a Melbourne woman was supposed to get her partner's embryo but was implanted with hers by mistake. In April, the same company revealed a Brisbane patient was mistakenly implanted with another patient's embryo, resulting in her giving birth to a stranger's baby. And long-awaited regulations are coming into effect for buy now, pay later services in Australia. The tighter regulations are part of new legislation introduced by the federal government, with the products now subject to the same rules as credit cards, and that they must also comply with credit laws regulated by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. But some critics say the new measures don't go far enough. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the immigration protests in Los Angeles. Local authorities in LA are blaming the Trump government for escalating the violence on the streets by bringing in the National Guard. LA Mayor Karen Bass says it's a deliberate attempt by the federal administration to create disorder and chaos in LA.
People should exercise their right to protest. That's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. We are part of an experiment that we did not ask to be a part of.
But Donald Trump has defended his move, adding thousands of extra Marines and US soldiers are also on standby and ready to be deployed to LA if needed.
If I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. 7 News US Correspondent Mylee Hogan is on the ground in LA and joins us now. Mylee, thanks so much for joining us. You're joining us from downtown LA right now. Tell us what is happening on the streets as we record this episode.
Well, at the moment, we're in day 4 of these demonstrations and people are still turning up. They're still here, they're passionate and they're angry as well. And at the moment, the numbers of protesters have dwindled, but that doesn't mean that there's not still people out here. We can see a couple of people at the moment who are standing in the street. They have flags with them. Some of them have masks over their face. So there's still a little bit of a confrontation with police. But I will say on day 4, it hasn't escalated to those scenes that we did see overnight, where we saw vehicles being set on fire. That occurred yesterday at the protest. We haven't seen that level of behaviour today. Much more peaceful protests. At times it's been tense, but overall I would say peaceful. We've only seen the police use rubber bullets intermittently, a few flashbangs to warn the crowd, but it does seem to be a lot calmer today compared to what it was yesterday and last night.
So, Mylee, in regards to what happens from here, there's ongoing speculation. We can't seem to confirm the reports at this stage that the US president has threatened there are hundreds of US Marines on standby ready to be deployed. How has that been received there on the streets?
Well, as you mentioned, the communication around that has not been amazing. It's been confusing about whether or not those Marines are going to be on the streets in Los Angeles, what their role would be when they do arrive in downtown Los Angeles. We have heard some officials say that they are coming in to protect federal buildings and to also help other federal officers, but we don't have an idea of exactly what that will look like. So it's difficult to make much further comment on it because it's unclear what will happen. But we do know that if they do show up here, it really will be a major escalation, a show of force, and what Donald Trump is willing to do and with the military, and what he's willing to do with them when there are protests in states around America.
In regards to that, Mylee, it's really interesting unpacking this right now. This is certainly a US president, a federal authority, flexing his muscles to basically draw a line in the sand with what happens in the different states around America. And there's so much politics involved in this at the moment, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. This is all happening on the backdrop of a political battle as well. You have California's governor who clearly does not agree with the US President Donald Trump. There's a clear divide there in how they view this situation. Look, I will say when it comes to this protest, if you talk to the governor or you hear from the governor, if you hear from the mayor, they believe that they had this under control before Donald Trump sent in the National Guard. The governor has clearly stated that the scenes that people were seeing on their TV screens, on their phones, of the protests escalating, he has blamed Donald Trump for that and blamed him for sending in the National Guard, saying that's what's caused the escalation. Even when you talk to some of the protesters on the ground, they agree with that as well, saying that they felt it was quite inflammatory, it added fuel to the situation. And a lot of them said they feel quite intimidated as well, seeing those law enforcement officials out. But as you mentioned, the politics, the political battle that's going on here as well. Governor Gavin Newsom is now going to sue the Trump administration. So we will get to see this play out in court, whether or not this was an overreach by the US president or whether or not the courts will agree that he made the right decision.
So just give us a bit of context with this, Mylee. From what we can understand, this was all about President Trump being very, very clear in following through on his mandate to crack down on US immigration. Is that correct? That's what was behind all of this?
Correct. Donald Trump ran his election campaign. One of the key policies that he ran on was a border crackdown and a crackdown on illegal immigrants. Now, what's happened here in Los Angeles is that a number of ICE raids have taken place on the Friday, which is those agents that have turned up and done sweeps through a number of workplaces and taken people who are suspected of being illegal immigrants into custody. Now, what has really stood out about this one in particular is that it was targeting people in their workplace or trying to find work, whereas we've really heard this rhetoric that they were cracking down on hard criminals who were here illegally, and that is what a lot of people thought was going to happen. But I'm gathering from what we're hearing why it's been such a shock, because this was people in their workplace. Many of them have not been accused of any crimes at all and are suspected of being illegal immigrants, undocumented migrants. So it sparked fear in the community. I've spoken to a couple of first generation or second generation immigrants who have said that their family members or people they know are frightened to go and drop their kids at school or to go to work because they're just unsure about these ICE raids and what might happen to them or their loved ones.
Mylee, we can hear right now as you're in the middle of all of these demonstrations and protests that are continuing. We can hear the car horns. We can hear the demonstrators. We know that at this stage, it seems like the demonstrations have not escalated as much as the last couple of days, where we know an Australian journalist, a colleague of yours, was shot by police with a rubber bullet. How are you feeling right now there on the streets? Because the Prime Minister has commented on that, saying it's unacceptable. Journalists should feel safe covering the news.
I do feel safe here on the ground. We have the training. We understand what we need to do, how to move out of a situation if we feel we have to. We do have the correct PPE. But look, there are some times in this line of work where things will happen and things will go wrong. I have seen that footage where Lauren Tomasi, who is a friend of mine and also a wonderful reporter, who was shot in that vision with a rubber bullet. It is distressing to look at. It does appear to look like that officer was aiming or targeting. So there will hopefully be an investigation into what exactly went on there. But journalists should be able to be on the front line in the field, clearly identifying themselves and report on the facts and bring those stories to people at home. That is the core of what we do, and it's important that we can actually keep doing it and feel safe while we're doing it as well.
One may argue, Mylee, more important than ever. So finally, and we really appreciate your time once again because you're reporting for 7 News and you're in the thick of the demonstrations right there. We'll let you go in a moment. In regards to how the feeling is on the streets right now, do you believe this is the way moving forward under a Trump administration, that this chaos will continue?
I just missed the end of that question. Sorry, Tash. I couldn't hear you over there. We're now getting flashbangs and fireworks that are being set off behind me. But if you can repeat the question for me, I might be able to get you an answer.
Do you believe now, with the feeling there on the streets, that this is the chaos and this is the way of America moving forward right now under a Trump administration?
Look, it is interesting because this is really the first big the first kind of demonstration that's gained quite a lot of traction, not just here in the United States, but across the world. It's gained a lot of attention in the media as well. People are seeing what's happening here. It's a protest against Donald Trump's policy and his crackdown on immigration. There have been other protests since Donald Trump took power. They were much more peaceful. We saw them with Elon Musk. And Donald Trump as well. We saw the Teslas getting lit on fire. The Tesla showrooms were being targeted. Look, I would like to hope that this is not the way forward, but it's certainly a way that people are demonstrating their resistance. Mostly, I will say that the protesters want to be peaceful, but I do think that Americans will protest back when they do disagree with a policy that is being put in place.
We appreciate your time, Mylee. You're doing a sensational job as always. Stay safe, and your job right now, telling the truth, is more important than ever. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Tash. Thank you.
That was 7 News US correspondent Mylee Hogan. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.